Who exactly is Samuel Oak? Or as we know him, Professor Oak. Is he actually a professor? And more importantly, is he possibly Ash's secret father, taking Mr. Mime out of the picture? Well, these are questions I am pretty sure every single Pokemon trainer and fan has asked themselves at least once in their life. So with that being said, we're going to answer every single question we have on Professor Oak as well as dive into his history and life story. Now, there are a little discrepancies between the manga and the anime, so I'm going to weave that together to give you guys an easy story you can understand. We're first going to start off with his early life. Professor Oak is a young boy on an adventure to discover the mysteries of the Pokemon world. His main goal is to capture every single Pokemon and ensure there is nothing he does not know for the benefit of himself as well as his fellow humans and Pokemon he meets along the way, which he considers his best friends. Now, Professor Oak's first Pokemon ever is a Charmander, which is actually really cool to know. He also stems from a prestigious family in the Kanto region. In the future, his brother is going to be the mayor of Palatown. His cousin is also going to be a professor, which we meet in the Aloha region, named Samson Oak. And Samson Oak's main task is to understand the basics of these Aloha variants in Pokemon. He will also get a grandson, which we know as Gary Oak in the anime or Blue in the Pokemon manga. Now, as young Professor Oak sets off on his journey, again, his main goal is to discover every single mystery there is in the Pokemon world. Because from what we understand at this time in the Pokemon history, a lot of the technology that we know in the modern day world don't really exist. They still use this kind of prototype apricot ball called the Old Ball. They also don't exactly know a lot about how Pokemon exist. Now, this could simply be due to them just getting over the Pokemon War, since that's one of the biggest theories explaining why there's such a drastic shift in technology and people in the Pokemon world. So his generation technically could have been the first ones to get over it, setting a stage for what's to come after, which is why there's not a lot of information being spread throughout the regions, and his goal is to solve that. So as he continues on out there, he makes friends with a lot of Pokemon as well as taking notes on every single Pokemon he encounters, since the Pokédex doesn't exist, as he will later become a pioneer and the reason we have the Pokédex, just for your information. He also trains with his Pokemon to level it up and evolve him, catching new companions along the way. Eventually, the relationship he has with his Pokemon grows so much, he becomes one of the strongest Pokemon trainers in all of Kanto. At this point, he is conquering every single person in his way and is compared to Agatha from the Elite Four in terms of strength. And if you know anything about the Elite Four, especially Agatha, she is not a walk in the park. She is an extremely powerful Pokemon trainer, one you do not want to mess with. As he has risen to the top of the Kanto region, he begins to travel across the other regions in the Pokemon world, making friends along the way, which will come in handy as he gets older. Now, as time progresses, he continues traveling, but he's realizing to himself time is running out. He's not able to accomplish his initial goal of discovering everything there is to know about the Pokemon world. So he comes up with a great idea. Why not become a professor, somebody who leads the next generation, as well as create a network of the friends he already knows across the different regions so they can all compile their information together into a central database. And one of the best ways to do so is ensuring that kids that go off on these journeys take Pokédexes. And that's the next part of his journey. Some of his close friends who later become professors are Professor Elm and Birch from the Johto and Hoenn region. He is also good friends with Professor Rowan from the Sinnoh region, and he is known worldwide as one of the top leaders in their industry, as well as remembered from his friends as one of the greatest Pokemon trainers out there. Some of the information we gather from the Pokemon manga is that Professor Oak seems to be a central figure in a lot of the events going on in the world. For example, whenever legendary Pokemon or there are massive events going on that can disrupt the balance of the world, Professor Oak is one of the individuals that is always notified of this from his fellow associates or higher officials. So it seems like the professor's job, especially his, is to ensure they can find a way to bring the balance and stabilization of the Pokemon world, which goes to show his importance to the stability of the world itself. Now, Professor Oak himself also seems to have a great understanding of the underworld of Pokemon. For example, Team Rocket, Team Magma, and so on. And he seems to also be working behind the scenes to find a way to prevent these groups from gaining too much power. We also know that he actually knew a lot about the information and research Mr. Fuji was doing in creation for Mewtwo. So it seems like he was aware of the entire situation, but there was nothing he could have really done about it. Now, coming back to the start of the modern day adventures of the Pokemon manga and the anime, at this point Professor Oak is the old man we know, with his colleagues all around the world. And today is the day he's going to give his grandson, along with Ash Ketchum, a starter Pokemon. And the starter Pokemon that he's going to give out are the iconic Pokemon of Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur. Now, Charmander's the best one out of the set. Even though Bulbasaur is the best choice in terms of the games, that walking lettuce is pretty tough. I don't really like him that much, but that's just me. Now, as we know, Gary is known as Blue in the manga, and Red and Ash are completely different characters. Ash is the main one we're going to follow in this, since it's going to come full circle as we continue on in this video. All you need to know about Red is going to be the greatest Pokemon trainer ever from the manga, and nothing will ever really change that. Now, in the anime, Gary does choose Squirtle, which is pretty cool. However, as Ash arrives late, all the starters are already chosen. Now this part is very important, so pay attention. He ends up with a Pikachu by Professor Oak. Now it may at first seem like this Pikachu is a random coincidence, but it's not. Professor Oak knows exactly what he's doing in this scenario, as he himself raised the Pikachu and his Pikachu was extraordinarily powerful. So he deliberately gives Ash this Pikachu knowing the outcome that it's going to give in the future. And the reason he's going to know what's going to happen in the future we'll get to in a second. Professor Oak acts as a mentor to this next generation, giving them Pokédex as we said earlier, so they can go out and gather information to bring back to him, which he can share with his colleagues. Now with Ash Ketchum in particular, he seems to have taken an extra interest. Now initially, me and my friends, along with a lot of fans, thought he may have been Ash's father. That somehow did not seem to be the case, as we found out in Pokemon Forever. The reason he was like this pseudo-father to Ash Ketchum, where he would push him to be better as well as feed him knowledge so he could become smarter and a better trainer in general, was because of the potential he saw in him in the movie Pokemon Forever, where he actually met Ash Ketchum when he himself was a boy. Now the movie's pretty simple. This boy actually gets sent forward in time and his name is Sam. Ash Ketchum and him become very close friends, as Ash shares a lot about his life and shows this little kid Sam how wonderful it is to be friends with Pokemon, which actually inspires Sam, making him want to be somebody just like Ash Ketchum and go out there and find the mysteries of the world, as well as become best friends with Pokemon. At the end of the movie, after they save Celebi, Celebi takes Sam back into the past, and we learn from that movie that this character Sam is actually Professor Oak, which is one of the biggest twists in the Pokemon franchise, which goes to show that everything Professor Oak was doing, all his inspirations, his goals, as well as what he did with Ash in the entire series and making sure he got a Pikachu, was all because of this moment. Ash was the person who inspired him. He also realized that Ash is the person that will propel the Pokemon world forward, so he needs to be there to support him as well as ensure he ends up on the right path. And that's exactly what he does. So it sadly turned out that he's not his father as far as we know, and we don't think there's any information actually showing Mr. Mime is, other than some memes on the internet. And that's the story of Professor Oak, a kid who had a dream to go on an adventure and discover every single mystery, unable to accomplish it. So what does he do? Set out to change the world to ensure that the next and following generations will be able to do so in an easier manner, while getting help along the way and assuring there are other people out there who are willing to help in different regions just as he is. So without Professor Oak, I don't think the Pokemon world would have been what it is today. So I have a question for you. What is your favorite starter from the Kanto region? Mine is clearly Charmander. I would love to hear how many of you actually like the walking lettuce Bulbasaur.